Where are they now? Expansion Draft Edition, Part 3.
You are Locked On Kraken, your daily podcast on the Seattle Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Seattle hockey fans, welcome to another episode of Locked On Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you your favorite team, the Seattle Kraken, every single day. Erica L. Ayala here, and this is our third and final installment of Where Are They Now? The Seattle Kraken players that were picked from the expansion draft, where are they now? We've gone through players that have played 0 games for the Kraken up to those who have played a minimum of 75. That included our first ever captain, Mark Giordano, and now we're getting into the 100 and more club. And we actually start with someone who I have said may make the top 100 players from the Locked On NHL channel that we will have here coming up soon as we march into the next season. And that is Joey Daccord. Joey Daccord comes in next on our list, a goaltender taken from the Ottawa Senators. He's still with the Seattle Kraken, 117 games and counting for Joey Dax here. And, at first I was like, I wonder if people would be surprised that he's on the lower end of this. But you have to remember, he's a goaltender, so that in and of itself brings a few more games that he's not going to play compared to those that he will, or at least that's how it should be. And that's not how it always has been for Joey Dax or any goaltender for the Kraken. But yeah, Joey Dax, I think, is becoming quickly a huge piece of what the Kraken are trying to do. I remember talking a few years ago about how I was hearing murmurs that folks didn't necessarily know or maybe even want Joey Daccord to be one of the top 2 goaltenders in the organization. And then I just don't think that it's a question that he's our top goaltender. Now, is that good enough? That's a whole nother conversation to have. But also, did you know Joey Daccord started a YouTube channel? I know we haven't talked about it here, but I have been following, and I have some content plans for Joey Daccord when it comes to training camp. We just had a meeting about that. So we're super excited for some stuff with Joey Daccord. But I mean, I can't say enough about Joey Daccord. We talk about him all the time. So let's keep it moving. Morgan Geekie comes in at 142. He and Carson Soucy, as a matter of fact, have 142 games in a Kraken uniform. Morgan Geekie is coming off of his best NHL season. Of course, he has played with the Boston Bruins. He signed as a free agent with the Boston Bruins. And I know a lot of people really liked Geekie. I wasn't as upset to see him go. I've been very proud to see how he's played. Again, he, has played over 100 games for the Kraken. To be exact, he is coming in at 142 alongside Carson Soucy. But he's coming off his best season, 77 games played. That is a career high. 33 goals, that's a career high, or in the NHL, of course, and 24 assists for 57 points for Morgan Geekie. He really blossomed with Boston. And honestly, I love to see it. I love to see that for him. He played for the Kraken in 21-22 and 22-23 before, again, signing with the Boston Bruins. Carson Soucy, what a spicy little guy, right? I say little guy. That is definitely a grown man, excuse me. But Carson Soucy sometimes was a little bit more of a liability than we needed him to be, and has, again, played also as many games as Morgan Geekie for the organization. I mean, face card definitely never declining, but we've seen that he's played with Vancouver after moving on from the Seattle Kraken, played with Vancouver in 23-24 as well as the 2024-25 season. But in 24-25, he ended the season with the New York Rangers. And we will talk about the New York Rangers coming up right now, because Will Borgen, he's our first player on this list to be at 200 or more games. Will Borgen, we know we lost him to the trade that brought us Capo Caco, a defenseman who we took from the Buffalo Sabres in that expansion draft. He's still in the league playing with the New York Rangers, and he's reunited with Carson Soucy. We end this group here before we get to the heavy hitters with Brandon Tanev, the man who sees ghosts and likes to wreck, absolutely annihilate young Kraken prospects in his first game back at CPA. I feel like that's how I remember Brandon Tanev. I don't know about you. You might have listened to our episode where we talked to Kayla Barnes about fair or foul, kind of laying a heavy hit on a young prospect as soon as you come back for, your first game from the team you just played against. Woof, that was brutal. And I think kind of spoke to some underlying issues happening with the organization at the time. The left winger we picked up from the Pittsburgh Penguins, talk about playing with sandpaper. He was with the Winnipeg Jets. He returned to that team before signing with the Utah Mammoth in the offseason. He had his best career offensive season with the Seattle Kraken, 82 games played, 16 goals, 19 assists, 35 points. That was in 22-23. But yeah, Tanev is squarely, I think, on the side of no longer a Kraken, and I don't think he gets as much fanfare when he's returned as he did when he was here. But the time was up, let's just say, for Brandon Tanev. But we will come to just one more name on this list, no longer with the Kraken, and everyone else is still here with us. We're going to give you the last few players in our Where Are They Now expansion draft edition. Again, only one is somewhere else, and everyone else is still with the Seattle Kraken, at least for now, because as I teased in the first installment, we already have more trade rumors regarding some of these veterans, because again, they're all at more than 238 games, which is where Brandon Tanev clocked in. We will talk about that coming up on this special episode of Where Are They Now expansion draft edition on Locked On Kraken. This episode of Locked On Kraken brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. The NFL season is almost here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Now, you can use this for player props, building your same game parlays, or even you can use the app, I should say, for player props, building same game parlays, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. You can do all of that on the app or on the website. It makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. It's quick, easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to Sundays. So are you ready? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Hey, thanks as always for making Locked On Kraken a part of your daily destination, whether you're your first listen of the day, midday listen, or your late night listen while you're having some ice cream, or maybe that's just me. I'm about to have some ice cream. I got ice cream cones at home. I haven't done that in years, but I was just kind of wanted an ice cream cone, Oh, cravings. Us ladies know. I only start craving chocolate and ice cream cones. Anyway, let's get back to this list. Now, I told you only one player remaining that is no longer with the Seattle Kraken. And I feel like this is a name where people, unlike Brandon Tanev, definitely still want to claim. That's Yanni Gourde. Oh, man. Yanni Gourde, a center left winger. We picked him up from Tampa Bay Lightning. That's where he's at now. We traded him to Tampa Bay after it just became clear last season was not going to work. We sent Oliver Bjorkstrand with him, not on this list because we did not get Oliver Bjorkstrand through the expansion draft, but Yanni Gourde clocked in 271 games in a Seattle Kraken uniform. I certainly think of him fondly. We know that Will Borgen and Matty Beniers, the Gourde family kind of took them in, young guys. So that was always fun to see. The holidays and different things like that. Next on the list, just 4 more games as of now for the Seattle Kraken, Vince Dunn. Now we know he's dealt with injury and this number will go up, we're expecting, but he comes in at 275 games. Vince Dunn is, of course, a blue liner for us. We picked him up from the St. Louis Blues. He's still with the team. I do think that he could be a player also that cracks that top 100. He definitely is a top player for us. I did rank him a little lower than Montour and Beniers and Wright. We've talked about this when I had to submit up to 7 names. And that's just because I was thinking, what have you done for me lately? I have every expectation that he will bounce back from injury, but we've seen that he's come in injured into training camp a few times. And I just, I took that into consideration. Another player here, our current captain, Jordan Eberle. Right winger we got from the Islanders, still with the Seattle Kraken, 281 games, missed a lot of time with a very rare, I suppose, injury from what we were getting the sense of when it came to what the physical therapy would be like. And he was on a tear. He got named captain and was playing like the heartbeat of the Kraken until he went down with that injury. So that was a tough loss here. Next on the list, and the first at 300 or more, 311 to be exact, Jamie Alexiak, a defenseman that we picked up from the Dallas Stars in the expansion draft, or as an expansion draft pick, because some of these guys, I didn't really get into the technicality of it, but some of these guys were able to sign before the expansion draft, but they still count as the expansion draft pick from that team. Jamie Alexiak was one of those players, a player that I think has grown into his role, not always someone that I loved. I thought his footwork could be a little clunky, Larson as well at times, but these are good, big-bodied defensemen. Later in an episode coming up this week, I want to talk about, I think it was from Yahoo Sports, that they have some predictions for the Kraken, and so many people talk about the defenders or the blue liners being really good for the Kraken. And I have always pretty much agreed with that. And I think we've even gotten better over the years. That's one area where we've gotten better over the years. I do think that there are too many defensive breakdowns as a team that at times make it, make what we're trying to do on the ice just too difficult. So I think the forwards got to step their game up. But I've liked what Alexiak has been doing. Speaking of forwards stepping up, at 350 games clocked in for the Seattle Kraken, Jared McCann. We picked him up from the Maple Leafs. He has a whole story about, revenge games and, going back to Pittsburgh even, but Jared McCann has been solid. Our highest goal scorer, or our best scorer, since we were a team. And again, I don't think we really schemed well for him, set him up to be a high scorer last year, and he still did it. Jared McCann, though, later on this week, we might have an episode about a potential mock trade and, what's going on with McCann. He's been a part of trade rumors. Alexiak sure has been. Vince Dunn has been. And so has our final guy, the Iron Man himself, has almost a perfect record, 327 games since the expansion draft. That is the one and only Adam Larson. We picked him up from the Edmonton Oilers. He is still with the organization. Vince Dunn, of course, if you follow on social media, kind of broke the news that Larson extended. How long Dunn or Larson or Alexiak or even McCann will be with the organization, we know not. But all of them are clocked in as our top 5, Eberle as well, as our top 5 players here when it comes to, players that are coming from this expansion draft. But, these guys that we talked about, they're not the only guys that have had an impact on the organization over the years. I didn't get to talk about one of my favorites, Ryan Donato. They don't even include some of the players that are on the that have been with the organization from the beginning, that are still with the organization, like a Jaden Schwartz, who signed after the expansion draft. So he didn't come over in the expansion draft. And so we're going to have to do an all-time Kraken list. We're going into season 5. There's not a lot of history, but season 5 seems like about the right time to start reflecting on what we know about this organization. And as you know from my off-season content, I want to talk heavily, extensively about what is the expectation now that we've moved around some front office personnel. What is realistic here? What is the vibe that we're going for? How are we going to get to that, quote, perennial playoff team? And is as soon as possible, literally as soon as possible. But we have plenty of things to talk about. As I mentioned, we had a production meeting. Jordan Dabney has been helping behind the scenes with some things, and that's only going to ramp up as we get closer to not only the NHL season, but also the PWHL season. And if you are a PWHL Seattle fan, then you're going to want to tune in to the next episode of the Women's Hockey Report. We've been doing deep dives on all teams, and we are up, and I should say PWHL Seattle is up next with a special guest that I think some of you may know. But thank you as always for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this mini series where we talk about where are they now, the Seattle Kraken expansion draft edition. But there are some names that have been, again, integral to the Kraken that we didn't get to talk about. So we're going to have to do some more of these where are they nows as we get ready for season number 5. Be kind to yourselves, be kind to one another. And as always, we hold fast, we stay true, and we say loud and proud, let's go Kraken. And I will catch you on the next episode. Peace out, everybody.